another episode of the Clapp Trap. We are back for a Wednesday episode talking all about the Patriots with Patriots underscore Andrew, bringing him back to discuss what happened in week 13. We also had a lot of other things that happened kind of off the field, some commentary, some interesting questions that were asked to people. And I want to go over all of that. I want to see what Andrew's thinking about that. But we got to start off. Obviously, Patriots lost to those Bills. It was a tough one, losing 24-10 at home. And now they're back to 6-6 on the season. And things aren't looking great as of right now. But I got to just start off with you, Andrew. How are you feeling about this team right now? How are you feeling about the Patriots' chances going forward after week 13?
Probably feeling about the same as everybody. Not that great, obviously. Not. I personally don't even think it was week 13. I think it was more the week before, like that loss against Minnesota because of the loss against Chicago earlier in the season. Like the Minnesota game was kind of pivotal, and that was one they could have had. So I've kind of felt like, all right, that's kind of a wrap in the season. Since that game, the Patriots being the Patriots, just how they typically are. Now that it's kind of futile, they'll probably rattle off a couple of wins just to, get really out of that top 15 draft pick range. They don't want one of those premium picks. They want to, They want to be just outside those blue chip players like they always seem to be. But no, so for me, it's pretty much like I'm not like a believer in really too much in the way of moral victories. Yeah, you can have one or two over the course of a year, but at this point, finishing strong for them is probably more of a moral victory than anything. They just, I don't see them beating the Bills. They can definitely, obviously, win against Arizona, potentially against Vegas. They should win against Vegas, but who knows with that. And I think they'll be just on the outside looking in at the end of the season. So I'm a realist. So to me, it's like, hey, if you're not making the playoffs, it doesn't matter if you go, 6-11 or if you go 9-8 and miss it. It doesn't really make a difference. So get that higher draft pick. That's how I look at it.
Well, the only person it matters to the most is Bill Belichick and his win record, right? That's about it right now. Just stack those wins, I guess, for him. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's over. Obviously, I think that's how we all feel. I think you nailed it. Everybody's feeling that way as a Patriots fan right now, at least the ones that are being real with themselves. Even if you think that you're going to go out there and be able to beat the Cardinals team and then beat the Raiders, both those teams on the road, there's no way that anyone feels confident that they could even touch the Bengals, the Dolphins, or the Bills in those last three games. You can't feel confident about that, especially with the way that those teams are playing. Bengals just having a huge win over the Chiefs. Once again, they just keep beating the Chiefs. Obviously, the Bills are going to beat us. And then you never know with Miami, but I feel like everyone in the division obviously has that little extra oomph anytime they're playing the Patriots just because of the reign of dominance that there was, right? The Bills have been the little brother for so many years and beaten up on by Tom Brady. They take every single chance they can to beat us as much as they can at all times. So, yeah, it's tough right now. And even if we were able to fall into a position to get those draft picks, they'd trade out anyways, right? So it doesn't really matter. So at the end of the day, who really cares? But yeah, it seems like it's over, it's been over, right? I think the Minnesota one, that was when you really were feeling like there's very minimal chance that they're going to actually even make the playoffs at this point. Then you go out there against the Bills and you're only able to put up the 10 points. Looked pretty bad. Other than Marcus Jones looked really great. Why aren't we got to get him more involved in the offense, right? That guy is extremely
he looks
fast.
like he could be a top tier, just low cut slot receiver. Just
come on.
You know what I mean? Like, almost like a baby Hunter Renfrow out there.
Get him in there. Get him to those quick screens, whatever you got to do. Get the ball in his hands quickly. Obviously, he's got the speed to be able to beat anybody. That touchdown was insane. Loved it. As we had talked the last time I had you on the show, love all the Joneses on the team, even though Jonathan Jones is kind of getting smoked in that game by Diggs left and right. And that was probably one of his worst performances of the year. I know it's tough. I know it's against the Bills, but that was a glaring, showdown for him. Diggs, penalties, everything that he was doing seemed to be wrong. So I was a little upset with that, but I don't know. We're going into a game now against the Cardinals. And maybe you'll be able to do something, but doesn't even matter anymore. Who knows at this point? But there's other things that we got to talk about. one of those things that is a major topic of conversation right now is a little conversation that Bill Belichick had on the Greg Hill morning show on WEEI. He was asked some questions about what he's going to do with the team going forward, and asked if he was going to do anything with the offense moving forward, changing anything, because I think we all were thinking the same thing. That Matt Patricia play calling was just brutal in that one. You're running it when you shouldn't be running it, little dump down passes, all these ridiculous things, continual screenplays behind the line of scrimmage in crucial situations. It's brutal. It's been brutal the entire season. But Bill was able to say to that question, I think we need to do what we're doing better. Obviously, thanks, Bill. I don't think that at this point, making any dramatic changes, it's too hard to do that. So with that answer from Bill, I think everybody's been talking about it this week. Do you agree with what he's saying? Are you upset with what he has said? Do you want, I think we all want to make a change. Do you think it's the right time to, or do you agree with what Bill is saying in that quote?
Overall, I agree with him because the way I read into it, the way he said at this point, that leads me to believe that he's kind of, maybe it's a Freudian slip or whatever, because he doesn't really ever throw anybody under the bus. But I took that as him acknowledging, hey, this is not working. There's definitely something wrong here. However, doing it at this point, like, what are we going to accomplish by doing that? Because you're not going to be able to make any big schematic changes. He's absolutely right about that. I think everybody agrees on that. So I think, yeah, maybe you can be like, hey, maybe we want Troy Brown or, one of the other assistant coaches to step in and call plays, see if they're any good at it. But then it's like, to what end? You're just back at kind of the same thing in the offseason. It's just another unproven guy. So what they really need to do is go after a proven offensive coordinator in the offseason and I guess just kind of bite the bullet until then. Because, schematically, like I said, nothing's going to change. We all know that. That's not realistic. It's really just more of a changing what you call and when, because it seems like they're getting more and more predictable with each passing week, and teams are really able to kind of lock into the tendencies of Matt Patricia, and they kind of know what the Patriots are going to be running, and that seems to be happening more often than not.
Well, that's the problem, and that's why I don't agree with the quote. Is like, why are you going to let Matt Patricia continue to just? First of all, if he's your buddy, why are you letting him continue to run his own career into the ground by making these bonehead decisions left and right? Get the play calling out of his hand just so he doesn't shoot himself in the foot anymore. If you really are friends with this guy, Bill, and you want him to be able to have another job at some point, if you continue to let him ruin Mac Jones by doing these horrible play calls that we all can see, like you said, he's becoming predictable to the point where we all see what's about to happen. The other team sees what's about to happen, and he still makes those same calls. Mac Jones is getting frustrated. The offense, Kendrick Bourne is still somehow in the doghouse from preseason, it seems like. I just don't understand why you can't go to a Troy Brown or the tight ends coach or anybody else in the offense that is a part of that scheme. And they understand you're not going to change the overall scheme right now, but make a few different play calls, try and get a little crazy with it. I don't know, change something up. I just feel like at this point, you're doing Matt Patricia, who, once again, I feel like the only reason he got brought in this scenario is because he's Bill Belichick's buddy. You're doing him more disservice by letting him go out there and keep being as bad as he's being. I know that Mac Jones has gotten a little bit better recently, and I'm happy to see that. Obviously, we want the best thing for Mac. And the last time I was talking on the show, I was saying that something needs to happen. There needs to be an intervention to save his career, because, at this point, we can't have him go further and further down into the bad second-year quarterback area and just be demoralized going into the next season, I think, personally. So I don't know. Don't you think that that's just kind of hurting Matt Patricia's overall career goals going forward, or the chance at a second job? Or I should say, I don't even know how many jobs he's had at this point. His next job?
Yes and no, because honestly, like, I think if there was a next stop for him, that it would be hurting him. I think this is the last stop for him. I think everything that happened in Detroit was kind of like, unless you really, really turn it around, start impressing people, you're probably New England or out of the league at this point.
Yeah.
I agree with your point about everything with Mac Jones. It seems like they kind of put on a clinic in how to ruin your second year QB, how to not put him in a position to succeed all year long. And I think obviously Matt Patricia is, probably suspect number one with the play calling, but there are definitely some things that Bill did too. Just the whole offensive line situation, trading away Shaq Mason for a 5th-round pick just to use a 1st-round pick on a rookie who's going to have to start day one. And it's like, look, this year should have been basically all about, like, I know we wanted it to be about, hey, Patriots winning, taking a step forward, going, maybe potentially deep playoff run, but really what it should have been about. And I would say the same thing for, the Jets, the Jaguars, the Bears, and the 49ers, all who took quarterbacks in that same class. The most important thing in this year is setting that quarterback up to succeed, to be your guy. It doesn't matter. Your defense doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. Your record doesn't matter. You need to make that guy your franchise guy going into year 3, because that's when your window really truly starts to open.
Yeah. And you set up your defense, but your offense stinks right now. Sorry, continue.
Well, I was just going to end with, I saw this the other day. I don't want to take credit for it because it wasn't my quote, but somebody wrote, Matt Patricia was way better as a head coach than he was as an offensive coordinator. He wasn't a very good head coach, so let that sink in.
I was going to say, you're really setting a low bar there for that one. I mean, that's brutal, but I guess it's not wrong. I don't know. Maybe at least he did a little bit as a head coach. He's done nothing as an offensive coordinator. So at least from what we've seen, I don't know. Like what did he make better this year, Matt Patricia, than what you would have already had if you had just had like a robot going out there and picking calls from like a Madden playbook? Like, you weren't really doing anything special. Obviously, like you keep saying, he became predictable very quickly. And I don't know, anybody could go out there and call little screen plays behind the line of scrimmage, run plays, tosses, all this kind of stuff in horrible moments of the game. So I don't know. He's obviously done nothing for this team. So yeah, it's bad. And obviously there is still a lot that goes on Bill Belichick. I mean, we can't say that enough. This was a tough year for him. You bring the team into there. You did some good drafting. You were able to bring in some good players on the defensive side. You made some good scheme changes with certain players, like we talked about Jonathan Jones, even though he had a bad game against Diggs, moving him outside, doing things like that, bolstering the front seven. Drafting well has been okay over these last couple of years from the defensive side. And then you just leave the offense out high and dry without really focusing on that offensive line. If you had done anything at all, just make sure that you have players on that offensive line to protect your second-year quarterback, just so he has a little bit of time. Because, I mean, how are you supposed to continue to develop if you're supposed to be, I don't know, or if you have no time, literally no time to throw at any time? So, I don't know. It's brutal that we're at this point. But, yeah, going back to just the Matt Patricia thing, I don't know. I think Bill is wrong to say you can't change anything right now, because at this point, I don't know. I just want Mac Jones to feel more comfortable too. I want him to be in a better place in his head going forward. And clearly he doesn't respect Matt Patricia. He doesn't respect what they're doing on the offense. He hasn't all year. So I don't know. And now I'm focused on Mac Jones fully at this point. That's where I'm at. Like you said, and these other teams that are developing a quarterback from that draft class, you need to focus on making that quarterback as good as possible right now, because you're going to continue to be a losing franchise and a losing team overall if you can't get that. So I don't know. It's brutal.
I think I have a hot take when it comes to this. And
okay,
you know what? It's going to be called hot, and I actually don't think it's that hot. I think it's realistic.
All right.
But I'm going to say this right now. If I was Mac Jones, his agent, his team, his representatives, everybody in his circle, whatever, I would, in my exit interview at the end of this year, be like, hey, what are we doing for next year? And then, you're not going to get much of an answer, then whatever. But then once a week, I would keep checking in with the Patriots, say, hey, what is the plan going forward? What are we doing for an established offensive coordinator? What are we doing as far as just the overall big plan to make things better, to correct the mistakes from last year? And if they don't have like a very firm, hey, this is what we're going to do, I think Mac Jones should request a trade.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's hot. That's hot right there. Okay, at this point, you think he should see the writing on the wall, talk to them, see what they're figuring out. And like you said, they're not going to tell him anything. And then if they're not giving him any information, all right, see you later. I need to go work with a team that's actually going to put my best interest forward, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds hot, but at the end of the day, it's like, Well, what they're doing with Mac isn't any different than like the Jaguars used to do with like Blake Bortles and every other quarterback they've ever had, not put him in a position to succeed. And everybody knows, like, by the end of year 3, if you haven't really shown anything, you're going to get thrown in the scrap heap. And like, this is the guy's career, it's his livelihood we're talking about. So it's like, if you're going to just do things that are going to continually hinder his development and just really hurt his overall growth as a player and any chance that he has of succeeding and ultimately like living out his dream, because that's what being a quarterback in the NFL is for him.
Yeah.
Why should he want to stick around?
Yeah, I don't see. There's nothing that they've put out there that would make him feel like, okay, we're fully invested in Mac Jones. Even at this point, I mean, you go back to early in the season, how quickly they were ready to go to Zappy after a couple of bad possessions in the first game he came back from injury. Even that kind of stuff probably weighs on him in the back of his mind as well. So, if he goes out there and requests a trade, though, that is going to be brutal for this Patriots squad.
Yeah.
You can't. We have to put more effort into making Mac Jones feel comfortable and get him ready for next year. Bailey Zappi is not the answer. Anyone who's still saying that is crazy. And if you can just go out there and shore up the offensive line a little bit, Mac Jones has shown you signs that he can be a comparable quarterback in this league. He can be a top 15 quarterback in this league if you just give him a little bit. If you just work with him a little bit, and if you don't go out there and call ridiculous play calls and put one of his favorite weapons on the bench for the entire game, or the entire season at this point, in Kendrick Bourne from last year to this year. I know that you added other weapons offensively, but man, that was another one that's just a head scratcher all the way at this point. So, yeah, if Mac Jones isn't going to get the things that he needs to continue growing as a quarterback, maybe it is. Maybe it's time for him to think, at least throw out that he's willing to move on. Don't act like, Patriots are this magical franchise that I could never think about leaving. Go to another franchise that's going to help you out, I guess, right? Go out there and try and,
anywhere with an established offensive coordinator. I mean,
yeah.
I guess, I'm not saying like, oh, they need to go out and, pay 3 new linemen, scrap the tight ends and get the next Travis Kelce and go out and get all these skill positions. I'm not saying anything like that. Like,
right.
Just if they're not going to get him an established offensive coordinator who's going to just even be competent, like somebody who's even just done it before,
just
like
done
their
it before,
plan,
right?
Yeah, like if their plan is to just run it back with Joe Judge or Matt Patricia or some tandem of the two of them or whatever, then that's what I'm saying. Like, hey, like, you're making the same mistake again. That's the definition of insanity, is expecting a different result here. Like, I'm out, I'm done. I think if they don't have a plan to bring in somebody who's established, who knows what they're doing, then yeah, he should ask to get out.
All right. Well, I think that you already nailed it, though. The wording that Bill used in that comment that we're talking about here, he said you can't make any dramatic changes now, and he used that word now. So I think that maybe they're already thinking that way. Maybe somebody else has already been telling Bill, whatever, or maybe he just can see, because he should be able to see, as a smart coach, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, I think the greatest coach of all time. You should be able to pick out what parts of your team is not working well. And clearly Matt Patricia isn't working well. So, if he doesn't change anything, I would be shocked at this point. But you talked about Mac Jones and how if he's not going to get what he needs, maybe he should request a trade. And the other thing that happened recently, well, in that game actually, was a big Mac Jones moment where you see him on the sidelines and he's freaking out. He's going off about how, we got to, effing pass the ball more. And then he said something, it kind of looked like he said, I'm sick of this run game. It also might have said, I'm sick of this quick game. I don't know what he actually said. I got to ask your opinion, Andrew. First of all, what do you think he actually said there? Do you think that he said that he's sick of this run game, or that he's sick of the quick game? And secondly, do you like the explosion on the sidelines out of Mac Jones?
I'm about 99.9% sure that he said quick game. It was pretty obvious that was their game plan going in, was to get rid of the ball quickly. Like we saw that. He was asked about the comments after the game, and he was like, yeah, quick game, whatever. Said that his emotions got the best of him, gave, the standard PR response that they always give whenever there's something on the sideline like that. I'm totally fine with it. And I think it actually needed to happen. Like, we can't continue this status quo of like, oh, we're just going to make some adjustments. It's like, hey, it's like December. It's well past time for that. Like we need to start making people uncomfortable, have that awkward conversation, whatever. And be like, hey, like what we're doing is not working and we need to change something. And he was right. Like, what are we doing throwing these short little passes down multiple scores in the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
What are you doing there? You don't win that way. That is just like trying to not get blown out by more points. I guess I don't even know. Like, just if you're going to go down swinging, push the ball down the field. Like, why did you draft the fastest receiver in last year's draft class to push the ball down the field? Why'd you sign Nelson Aguilar, who's fast and a deep threat, to push the ball down the field? What does Devontae Parker do? He goes down the field and makes plays. Like, you have an offense that's set up to do this and you're not doing it. So it doesn't really make any sense as to why. But yeah, I totally agree with Mac. Normal, like we're not used to seeing that kind of disagreeing with the coaches being so public, and the fact that that's being kind of allowed to fly, I think speaks a lot to how Bill feels behind the scenes about what's going on. Because I mean, Kendrick Bourne's made some comments, Jacoby Myers made some comments, Mac made some, and Troy Brown went as far as to say he agreed with Kendrick Bourne's comments about all of it. So it's like you got players and coaching staff being like, hey, like, you know, we're all on the same page. It's just this one guy that's not. So what's the deal?
Yeah, it's weird. I agree. It's kind of interesting that this stuff has been allowed to go on, whether it's being allowed to go on or if people are actually just kind of going against what they're told and still saying these things. I like the passion, obviously, out of Mac Jones. I agree with him. I think the play calling was ridiculous. He was saying it, like you said in the press conference. I think we needed chunk plays in those scenarios, and we were going for quick play, or we were going for like quick passes and things like that off to the side. You're not going to get that. And especially against a high-powered offense like the Bills, who clearly already showed you in the game that they could just run all the way down the field on you, take as much time as they want, and score basically every time. Yes, finally the defense did stop them a few times, but you have to go out there. And this is what I was saying in the last episode. Now we're the ones who are looking like the teams that used to play us when we had Tom Brady, where it was like, we're looking over there like, how are you not going for it on a 4th and short when you're at midfield, when you know you need to score against this team? Or how are you not going for longer plays, at least running routes that are towards the first down marker on 3rd and longs or anything like that? How are you not going for this when you know for a fact that we're going to go right down the field and score on you? Now we're that other team, the Patriots are, and we're looking over there at the Bills of the world. We're going to see the Bengals. We're going to see the Dolphins, these teams that are higher scoring offensively. And you're going to go out there and you're going to try and dink and dunk and play for field position. How dumb is that? We all know that that's not going to work. So I completely understand his explosion. It all is about that, the play calling, if you ask me. And you bring up a great point. If it's allowed to continue going on at this point, maybe that's showing that Bill Belichick really is looking over at Matt Patricia like, hey, man, I did all I could. I gave you the position. This is what you did with it. We're not going to be able to continue going forward with you. Clearly, it's not working. So I don't know. At this point, I'm happy to see the explosion because, like you said, it's the time of the year where we aren't figuring things out. Heads got to start rolling. We got to start calling people out. You can't. This isn't some prissy sport where everybody gets a sticker for participation. This is football, the NFL. We have to call people out when they suck. And Matt Patricia clearly sucks at what he's doing right now. So good on Mac for doing that. Good on him for backing it up in the press conference. And yes, it was kind of still like a stock answer, but at the same time, he didn't back away and be like, oh, no, it's not really what I meant. Like I was saying things that I shouldn't have said or anything like that. He was like, yes, I was emotional, but this is what I said. And I believe what I was saying to be correct. So happy to see that. You can see in Mac Jones, I still see it. You can see those moments where he has the leadership potential. He has the potential to be a decent enough quarterback in this NFL. Work with this player, please. Do not ruin this player. You tried your hardest this year. Somehow Mac Jones is still okay these last couple of weeks, showing you that he can still be good, even in this Matt Patricia offense. Let's not ruin this guy, please. This would be brutal if we lose Mac Jones. If he's actually asking for a trade in the offseason, what did you do? You actually completely ruined a player's chances. And I would think that he would be able to go to another team and still be good. So,
yeah, I mean, you just go down the checklist of what has changed from last year to this year, right? Mac Jones, he made the Pro Bowl last year as an alternate. Like, it's not like he was some lighted up stud
Right.
killing it, but
Still.
he played well enough to make a Pro Bowl as an alternate, which is more than any of the other rookies that year could say. He was, more than competent, just needed to learn a little bit more about, what's open versus not open at the NFL level, because those DBs will close in a lot quicker, pick the ball off. And, he showed a lot of promise. I know some people, especially in the Boston media, want to say, oh, well, he's got this little pea shooter arm, blah, blah, blah. People that can't tell you the difference between like a zone defense and a man coverage defense. So it's like, I tend to put very little stock into what they have to say, especially when you see a lot of like former great quarterbacks, former head coaches, a lot of guys saying, oh no, Mac Jones, he still has that potential.
Yep.
But you go through the checklist of what they did last offseason. It's like, okay, lost the offensive coordinator. You didn't really have much of a say there. Josh chose to leave. Sure.
True.
And then you decide, okay, instead of bringing in somebody established, we're going to bring in two guys off the scrap heap that, really haven't had much success elsewhere and have absolutely no experience on the offensive side of the ball.
Terrible.
Okay, fine. Maybe we could make that work if we're still running something very similar to the same system as last year that Mac had dealt. But no, we're going to go through an entire shakeup on the scheme. We're going to change everything. They're practicing, zone runs all summer long that obviously did not work out whatsoever. Right. So there's, that whole thing. And then on top of it, it's like, you're losing the continuity there with the play calling and the system. And now you're going to lose some continuity on the offensive line as well. It's like, what were you what result were you expecting kind of when you went through this whole thing? So when you go through that, it's like, despite everything that happened, he's still shown flashes at times this year. Like we saw that in the Minnesota game, right? That was one of the better games the offensive line has had all year long. And look what happened. Despite all of this chaos, all of this turbulence, all of this, nonsense with Matt Patricia going on, he threw for a career high in yards. So that shows to me, if you give him time, he's still going to be able to succeed just off the ability to process. That was his, his calling card coming out of college. He was so good at that it kind of made up for his, I don't want to say lack of mobility. I mean, nobody's going to confuse him for Lamar Jackson, but he can scramble and make some plays a little bit. We've seen that in recent weeks, especially. Yep. But yeah, so like he still shows those flashes even despite everything that's happened. So it's like year 3, it's make or break. Like they need to, hopefully Bill O'Brien, hopefully those rumors come to fruition. I've seen those, a lot. They seem to be kind of flirting with each other. So, I mean, if they just want to run it back with Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, then that's it. That's a wrap on his career.
You can't, and I can't see Kraft allowing that to happen again after everything, because Kraft listens to the media, Kraft listens to what the fans are saying and all that kind of stuff too, and he is a fan himself, so he knows what he's seeing out there, so he's not going to deal with it. I fully believe that at this point. We've seen over the last even 5 years, there's been less control from Belichick and more going to kind of the Kraft way, I would say. It's at least had his hand in the pot more, I would say, recently, so I can't see it happening. It better not happen. I don't know. That'll be a huge mark against Belichick if he can't just move on from this whole scenario. But hopefully we'll have Mac back. Hopefully he won't be a problem, or there won't be problems around him. Hopefully you'll give him an offensive line, because now I feel like we have weapons for him to use. But like you said, if he can't get the ball out because he got a rusher in the face every 2 seconds, then what is he going to do? Hopefully that's the case. I think it'll be the case. I think Mac Jones will be the quarterback going forward. I think that they will focus on getting the offensive line better. I think that they will bring in an offensive coordinator. And I think that everything is going to be in that direction. And we'll see what Mac Jones can actually be with a competent offense next year. This year stinks. This year is out the window. Maybe we'll win a few more games, just like you said, just to kind of, I don't know, for posterity's sake. I don't know why, really, at this point. We're definitely not going to be losing for draft picks, but I don't know. It seems like a lost season. Focus up for next year. We'll see what can happen. But
the only problem with having a lost season this early on in his career, like year 2, like this was supposed to be the season where we like say, all right, that's confirmation. We know he's the guy now. Build around him going forward. And it's, another year of him on that rookie deal that's so cheap that allows you to just load up with veterans and pay guys to surround him with talent. Now it's like, okay, well, next year we're kind of where we were supposed to be this year. Because it's like, even if my number one wish comes true and they get Bill O'Brien this offseason to come back and be an offensive coordinator. Okay, well, we're probably still year one in a new system for Mac. So, like, there's growing pains there. And it's like, all right, well, maybe next year, like, he shows signs, he proves to you that he's the guy, but we don't make that deep playoff run. Then all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, now it's year 4 where that window's starting to open. And it's like, well, you only really have another year after this before that contract's up. And the 5th-year option is great, but it's not that cheap. Like, it's cheap, but it's not that cheap. So they really need to get the ball rolling on this.
Yeah, well, hey, maybe this is just, Bill is just so smart. He's just outsmarting everyone. He brought in this coaching system so that Mac would look bad. And then by the time his contract's ready to go, we can sign him for super cheap. That's probably what he was doing. He's just trying to say, he's thinking way ahead and you guys don't understand it. That's what's really happening here is Bill just gets it more than you. I don't know. We'll see how things go. But there was one other crazy topic that I wanted to talk about really quickly. It's crazy. I don't even know why I'm giving it a moment to think about or talk about. But there was also the recent story that was put out, or report that was put out by Jeff Howe. And this man goes out there and puts out one of the most ridiculous thoughts that I've heard of recently. At least that's how I feel. I'm sure you feel similar, but we'll see right now. I'm talking about Jeff Howe talking about Tom Brady possibly coming back to the Patriots maybe next year. Obviously things haven't gone great in Tampa, even though they just had a Monday night comfortable behind victory where Tom Brady's doing everything that he can to get these victories and they're getting them. But the rest of the team stinks. Coaching staff stinks. He obviously didn't want to be there going into this year. Do you put any validation or validity into what Jeff Howe is saying here? Do you actually believe that there's even a percentage chance that Tom Brady would come back to the Patriots at all?
I mean, no, it seems so outlandish. And, prior to his report, like, I would have said 100% chance, absolutely no. But it's like, Jeff has been pretty reputable over the years. He's never been one of those guys with like the hot takes, throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks, whatever. So, like, it makes me wonder a little bit, like, it's so out of character for him to say something that like has no chance. So it's like there must be something behind the scenes that he knows. Like, I looked at it as like, well, Bill's praised Brady, Brady's praised Bill. Yeah, like the relationship starring a little bit. I still don't put much stock into it, but like there must be something that he knows that we don't for him to come out and say that. Maybe he knows that like the reason why Brady left, really a lot of it was Giselle that pushed him over the top because she didn't want to be here anymore. She didn't like the Boston Winters. Maybe there's a little nugget like that that he's going off of that we don't know. But I mean, if I was a betting man, and I mean, obviously on the show, we know I am a betting man. I'm not putting my money on Tom Brady coming back to the Patriots. No, not a chance.
Didn't he go out too and say like, I'm never living in a cold winter state ever again on his own too? So, I mean, I think on top of the Giselle thing, like, I think he doesn't want to be in cold weather areas either. I just think it's ridiculous to even bring this up. There's no way to have Tom Brady come back to the Patriots without, at least in my mind, it's seeming like he's coming back on his hands and knees, groveling back for Bill Belichick. I know that you could say like the relationship was mended and they're coming back on equal terms or anything, but like that. But I just don't see how it would be perceived anyway other than Tom Brady being like, you know what, Bill, I realize that every other coach is a bozo. I got to come back and be with you again here. At least I know that you're going to have a defense for me. At least I know you're going to have like a system and all that. That's how it kind of feels to me. So I don't see how it would ever work again without it making it seem like one of them has to say, I was wrong. You know what I mean? And I think that they're still so petty and still so on their own side of it that as much as they're like handshake, hey, buddy, how you doing? How's your family? I don't think that they're ever going to get to that point where one of them has to basically admit that they were wrong.
I mean, that's definitely, a fair point. I think the only thing that would help Brady in not being wrong there is he can be like, hey, like I've left, won a Super Bowl to show you, hey, it ain't all you, pal. Now I'm back. Let's both pat our stats and ride out together. I mean, ultimately, it's a moot point because it's not going to happen. And
right, it's not going to happen.
I'll come back on this podcast and I will eat a football. I will take a
Yeah,
football, a small miniature football, and I will eat it on this podcast if Tom Brady becomes a Patriot again.
I was going to say I'll write down my words on a piece of paper and literally eat my own words. That's what I'll do if that actually happens. So
I'll do that instead of the mini football. That was a bad idea. That was a hot take. That was over the top. I'm sorry.
Hey, it's on there though. We have that. That's verbal consent. You have to do that now. All right. Well, Andrew, I appreciate you coming on. You got through some crazy topics, some real topics, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. We'll have more Patriots games, more things to talk about. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.